All right, welcome into another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Today we are talking about the Week 3 wrap-up. Clarke is at 9 games. The line shuffles and around the Pacific. Get in the chat, like and subscribe. Let's go. All right, boys, we're here. We're ready to go for another episode. Just coming straight off that dumpster fire that was in Dallas, going to watch another loss in here. For people who don't know that I am in Texas. I was the Hockey Royalty Insider, and I think I was the first one to tweet out that the Kings might go 11-7. So, pumping my tires on that one. But, it was fun outside of the actual game, going with families, hanging out, doing those types of things, seeing some hockey. It was good. I mean, I love that stadium. I mean, the arena. It's always fun there. So, enjoyed it outside the $16 beers. But outside of that, welcome in, boys. Joe, how have you been this last week?
I've been doing pretty good, Randall, although I think I pissed off all of Dallas Star's Twitter last night when I mentioned I didn't like the goal song, and a lot of Pantera fans out there, I guess. I mean, yeah. I think it sucks, and that's no disrespect to Pantera or what they are, or the story behind it. I just think the song sucks, but maybe it's not my genre. I don't know.
I like it.
People didn't like it. I'll say that.
I like it. Like, it gets people pumped. It is what it is. But let's throw a little mini question to you guys. Like, for the Stars during the national anthem, they scream stars when it's the Star Spangled Banner, and there's some people that pisses off to no end, because it's like the national anthem, just sing the national anthem, like, don't make it about your team, right? What is your opinion on that, when like teams like do a little chant like on one of the words or variations? Like, don't the Knights do it as well, right? For night,
Mm-hmm. I don't really. It's a little annoying. I don't lose like any sleep over it or anything like that. I guess if I had a preference, then maybe just don't do it. But I honestly, I guess I couldn't really care.
It's just weird for me. What about you, Russ?
Yeah, I'm kind of like Joe. I'm impartial to it. It doesn't bother me either way. The thing that it kind of annoys me a little bit is that when people try to come up with a way to like counter what the other team is doing, and it's like, okay, now it's just getting ridiculous because you're just yelling a word that is not even included in the song.
Yeah,
and it just kind of gets obnoxious at that point. So, I mean, if the Knights want to do their thing, it's innocent. I mean, do whatever you want. I don't really care.
Speaking of whoever does whatever he wants, is Russell coming in here to join us at any time. The main man, the myth, the legend. In case you guys are hearing correctly, in your speakers, he is purring like a kitten. Got a new mic.
That's right.
Official tonight. The deep tones are coming out. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I got a new microphone. I feel like I could start my own AM radio station over here.
Oh, man, I like it. So, well, get in the chat. Put your questions in there. Put your comments in there. Thank you guys for joining us here. Let's get started. Week 3 recap. Some ups and downs, obviously ending on a down. But right before that, the blowout in St. Louis. St. Louis ain't doing too well this season, but they seem to always play us fairly tough. So maybe let's just go with some we'll start with the negative. I'll actually start with the positive. Let's go with the positive upbeat show this time. Positives from this week. Where are you taking that, Joe?
This is going to sound kind of crazy, but like going back to that Winnipeg game, they dominated the game. Like, this is a Kings performance that you're kind of hoping to start to see them settle into, right? I mean, if you go into any game and you're like, you're going to have 70% of the shot attempts, you're going to have 60 or 75% of the scoring chances, 65% of the high danger chances, like, you take that all day. And I know, it was a frustrating loss for a lot of people, but sometimes you run into a goalie that makes enough saves, and Hellebuck did just enough to keep them in it early. And it's like, those things are going to happen sometimes, I think. And as frustrating as it might have been to lose, I took a lot of positives out of that game, that they utterly dominated a team that was pretty good in Winnipeg. And then, they didn't get like down or anything like that or frustrated. And they show up against, Toronto when they win that one. Then they knock off the Blues. So that's 3 pretty good performances in a row that it's like, okay, you're not going to win all of them. And sometimes that happens, but I was just really happy that they kicked off the first part of the stretch with a great performance. Again, some individual mistakes that cost the team against Winnipeg. I didn't think it was a system thing, and I don't know if we want to jump into it in an effort not to ramble, but I'll throw this out there because Todd McClellan mentioned after the game about run and gun in that Winnipeg. I didn't get the sense that the team was playing necessarily run and gun. At least that's not in the way that I think of run and gun. I think there was some carelessness with the puck, which he has harped on frequently about puck management. So I guess I'll throw that out there, Russ. What your thoughts were, or Rando too. I didn't get the sense that they were trying to play a run and gun. When you're in the offensive zone, that's just the nature of it. Sometimes you're just going to be living down there. You're going to have defensemen jumping in. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, I think we talked about that after the game, about McClellan's comments, because he had said something along the path of, I don't know if the players should be, if they really want to experiment with this type of run and gun play. And that's kind of what I was like, well, why are you switching from what made you so successful last year to this new style of, hey, we're just going to be all about offense and maybe focus on offense a little bit more, when, I mean, the team just finished a 99-point season and took Edmonton to the Game 7 of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I don't know. It's weird because, yeah, it does seem like they are focusing a little bit more on the offensive end, but I don't know. It's hard to tell during the pace of play if there's really a systemic change without knowing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Without knowing if you're part of the team or even the coaching staff telling you. So it's I don't know. It's hard to tell. I personally, as much as I hated it before and I still kind of despise it, I wish this team would kind of stick to a 1-3-1 aspect, because that's what's made them a good hockey team going on since last season. But now I guess you have some more dynamic players.
Yeah, let me ask you that, because you're about to get into the dynamic players. Doesn't personnel dictate what kind of system you're running, or does the system dictate which personnel you should be hiring to come in? Like, is Fiala that type of player that fits the personnel? We all thought he did in the offseason, right? He's a strong neutral zone player, great carrying the puck. I don't think he's a liability defensively, but that's not his strong suit. So is he really going to mesh with the system? Or, then you also have a lot of, you say in the NFL, you draft a quarterback with a lot of intangibles. Your system needs to meld the talent that you have on the field. So how do you feel about that? And which one do you feel like the Kings are leaning towards at this moment?
Well, it's hard because we're only talking about one player of 5 that are on the ice and 20 that are suited up on a game.
You have Clarke, you have Vilardi who's up playing, who are all offensive guys. So it's not just Fiala.
True. Yeah, Brent Clarke is probably a little bit more dynamic, probably leans more to like Kevin Fiala type player. I don't know. I don't think that 1-3-1 system would hamper them in any way. I think Fiala is a dynamic enough player where he'd be able to make something happen in that type of system. And maybe you can just stick to, I don't know, maybe you can just stick to a line kind of situation. But it's hard to say when you're watching the game. Like I said, I mean, at points you can see it clear as day. They're running the 1-3-1, and then at sometimes they're all out forechecking. You have 2 guys down low. You have a F1 and an F2 below the blue line. So I don't know. Me personally, you just have to do what makes you successful. And the 1-3-1 made this team a good team last year. So I kind of hope that they stick to it more, because, I mean, look at the recent production too. We got to talk about defensively. This team's not good. They're not a good team defensively. They're probably one of the worst, if not the worst team in terms of goals against.
Bottom five.
And so, I mean, if there's one thing that can fix that, it's playing that type of structure, that 1-3-1 structure. It's going to limit entries into your own zone. So maybe that's something McClellan will have to lean toward now that they're past the 10-game mark into the season.
So, Joe, I mean, you're looking at the Kings are top 5 in offensive production as far as goals per game. Before the Dallas game, they're at 3.6 goals per game average, but they're also bottom 5, like I said. is in your opinion, do you agree with Russell that they need to stick with the system? Would you take less offense to get back to the suffocating the neutral zone style defense that we were accustomed to last season?
I've thought about this, kind of the question that you posed to Russ over the last couple of weeks. I'm like, is this something that the coaching staff has talked about or the organization has talked about? Because I would also include Dersey in that now that he's here full time. Then when you look in the minors, right, you see Rasmus Kapari's up now. You have a guy like Jordan Spence, who's going to be an extremely dynamic defenseman. So, like, there's more of these type of players kind of coming, and does it make sense to do a little tweak? The only thing I'll say is this. I got no problem with the 1-3-1 and clogging the neutral zone and making it difficult for opponents in their zone entries. I get it. I don't have a problem with it. I'm going to say, like, you look at go back to the Winnipeg game. When you're spending that much time in the offensive zone, part of the reason you're having that time in the offensive zone is the defensemen, they're jumping up into the play. Now, sometimes when the defenseman jumps up into the play, it's not as if he's a direct factor in the offense. But by him coming down or either going through to the center, what that does is it opens up space, right? So then everybody comes back up, and it creates a little bit of a problem for the defense, or for the defending team. So even if the defenseman isn't having the puck, but what happens sometimes is, you look what happened with the Phil Deneau. I think it was the first goal against Winnipeg, is he comes up high with the puck and he just kind of makes an errant pass just inside the blue line. It gets picked off, breakaway goal. So it's like, if you're going to do that, and if you're going to have your defensemen active, which I think they should be, then what happens is you have to be much more responsible and cognizant with the puck, which in that example, Phil Deneau was not. But also, you are going to potentially open yourself up for a rush coming back the other way. If you're going to have defensemen going into the play, you're going to potentially open yourself up the other way. I don't have a problem with it, because if you're spending that much time in the offensive zone, I'm good with it. And if that means if you have the puck, the other team doesn't. And if you're in offensive zone, the other team doesn't have the puck in your zone. The risk becomes the rush chance coming back. And that's what Winnipeg burned LA.
Do you think we don't have the goalies right now to defend?
Well, that's a great point. Is you don't. I mean, and you guys have heard me, I think, talk about New Jersey a lot, like offline. Like, I love that team, and they play a very up-tempo type of game, and they just got, more so last year, they got destroyed off the rush because they didn't have a goalie that could make a save or bail them out. And you don't want to get into that situation if you don't have the goaltending to do it. So that's where it's kind of, so you got some players that you want to be dynamic. You keep talking about how you want offense from the blue line. You activate your defense to get offense from the blue line. Well, you're going to open yourself up a little bit. So,
and those are a couple of things you said there. So, I mean, maybe we're paying attention to the wrong part of their strategy is maybe it's the defensemen that have been given the opportunity to jump into play a lot more. And that's why we're seeing more odd man rushes going the other way for the Kings' opponents. Because, I mean, I don't know offhand how many goals that the Kings have, from defensemen is like 4 or 5, but I think last year they only had like 20 through the whole season. And I mean, Matt Roy already has 3 goals. He's already surpassed his season high from last year. So I don't know. Maybe that's one thing we need to pay attention to more, to see maybe if the defensemen are getting more of a green light in the offensive zone. But that's the problem. The other thing too is, first of all, like I said, you're one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and then you have one of the worst goaltending tandems statistically in the league. So can you afford to give up those rushes the other end when your goaltenders aren't making a save? And that's why I say, if this team is going to get back to any sort of identity, they have to focus more on defense. The offense will come. I mean, you look like you said, Joe. I mean, or Randon, you have Brant Clarke in the lineup. Obviously, Kevin Fiala is in the lineup. So you have some dynamic offensive players here that can make things happen pretty much out of nothing. So maybe focus more defensively, and then just kind of wait for the opportunity to come to create an offensive scoring chance. Because, I mean, the way Kevin Fiala played in St. Louis, that was one of the best games I've seen from any winger on a King. He was all over the ice, like making plays left and right. He was Ziggy Palffy out there pretty much. And when you have that type of player, you don't need to be all out attack all the time. Just wait for your opportunity and let him strike. He's like a home run hitter. So just give him a chance and wait for it to come.
Yeah, I think you're looking at something along the lines is where they still don't have an identity, and that's something that they have talked about, or T-Mac has talked about, and we've talked about on this podcast is when you're floating without an identity, or you don't have a single purpose, or they're trying to play something that goes against what the players on the ice, you're going to continue to struggle or be inconsistent, right? Because it's not that they're struggling, because there's some games they're winning 5-1, they're dominating, everything's clicking, and then there's some games like last night in Dallas where they score 3 goals in 1 minute, which is clear miscommunication upon the defense, and you're leaving Cal Petersen out to dry. Now, I don't believe that he played on his head like a lot of people did on Twitter. Have your opinions, whatever you want, but he let some goals in that I thought were bad, and I thought he played really well too. So it's going to happen, but when you give up 3 goals in 1 minute, it's not just one person's fault. Like the defense was at risk. They gave up odd man rushes. It could have been worse.
The penalty kill was horrible.
Yeah, the penalty kill was god awful. Like 75% for Dallas, who is not a scoring team, right? I mean, so and can I just give it up for Miro Heiskanen? Like, how good is he? Man?
Oh,
Jesus
so
Christ! Just watching him live.
Yeah,
watching him live is just ridiculous. But going back to what I said, it's like when you don't have an identity, you don't know what you are. How are you supposed to play that every single night? Last year, they knew exactly what they are. They knew the rules. They knew that they were going to have to beat teams 3-2, 2-1, and that's just what it was. And now you're scoring 3.68 goals per game. Okay, yeah, we can shoot out some people now. We have the offensive ability. The power play's clicking. But then we're giving up stuff here. So, is it like Russ said, where, hey, they need to play the 1-3-1 and rely on the talent to score more goals and not a change in system? Or do they change the system to benefit the talent and really just live with a lot of these losses that are going to be 5-1 when the offense isn't clicking, or giving up leads, or doing those types of things? But there's having no identity, or having 2 identities is having no identity, right? I mean, so
I think as much of the problem is it's I don't know if it's so much, and I'm sure they do kind of go hand in hand a little bit, but it's the in zone defensive that's as much of a problem for me. They're giving up. You look at the last 3 games, double digits, high danger chances against at 5-on-5 in the last 3 games, which is more, by the way, than the Winnipeg game. So I think it's as much an in-zone structure thing where things are just collapsing that could be leading into that. And again, we're a dozen games into the season now, so you should start to see this stuff kind of really settle in. You can understand the first week or so of the season. You got a lot of new guys, a lot of new faces, learning the system, learning what to do. That shouldn't be as much of a problem these days. So it's definitely something that's going to have to get better, because they don't have the goaltending to bail them out.
4 goals by defenseman, by the way. You were wondering what the goals. 4 goals by defenseman.
Perfect. And I want to counter one thing that you said, Brandon. And you were right with this team has no identity right now. We're 12 games in, and I have no idea how this team's going to win. I mean, they might win 5-1 and play like a pure shutdown game, or they could lose 6-2. And it's hard to tell right now. I mean, but the thing is you said this team's not struggling. I think they are struggling. At this point last season, they had a better record in terms of points. So right now, defensively, this team is lost to me. And in net, this team is still lost to me.
I would agree. I would agree with that.
Yeah, do you guys have confidence in any goaltender that goes out right now? I mean, maybe Jonathan Quick, maybe Cal Petersen. I mean, you watch Cal Petersen, and yeah, he had – I guess I'll just recap the Dallas game. In the first period, he looks really good. I'll say that. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were giving up shots left and right, and he was making saves. And yeah, you can say what you will about the defensive game and whether Cal should make some of those saves. Because, I mean, the Seguin shot, that's just Tyler Seguin making an incredible shot, and there's bounces left and right. But the thing is we've seen this game from Cal Petersen all the time. And it just, for some reason, it always happens to him where he plays pretty good, but still gives up 5 or 6 goals. And yeah, you can say it looks good, or he played well, but it doesn't look good in the box score. That's what happens. We look at the end of the year, we're all looking at the statistics. You see Cal Petersen giving up so many goals per game. So it's just hard. I mean, I would say right now that this team is struggling, and maybe there needs to be more pressure put on the team. I don't know. I mean, how long are we into this rebuild? 4 years, going on 5 now? I don't want to say we should all treat them like the Toronto Maple Leafs and have the media asking if Mitch Marner, if they're going to be playing for their coach at a 4-4-2 record. I don't want to go that crazy, but I don't know. This team needs to be held to a higher standard. 6-6. That's an 82-point season. Is that going to cut it? I know it's
I
early,
agree with you.
Yeah.
Then, so you're in the media. That is it too soon to ask the tough questions? Is it too soon? Are there not being tough questions asked about the identity of this team and where is it going? Or, I know that sometimes it is too soon and people just ask questions to be edgy, but sometimes they're warranted, right? And, you've been in the locker room outside of Joe and I, and you've actually talked to these people and been around the insiders. Is it too soon to ask the tough questions, or do you think it's about that time? Because it feels, based on your tone and your verbiage, that you feel like it's about that time to start asking those tough questions about, like, where is this team going? What are the expectations, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I mean, expectations were asked all throughout training camp, and we never really got like a clear answer in terms of, make it to so round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, no management team's ever going to give out that answer, but I don't know. Maybe I think expectations should be this team should win a round or two in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I keep hearing people talk about like, if they might miss the playoffs, and then but we want to see development. No, this team needs to make the playoffs. They made the playoffs last year with all the injuries that they had, and now they're a better team on paper. I mean, especially with the resurgence of Gabe Vilardi and Brandt Clarke possibly in the lineup. I don't want to say it. I think it is probably still too early. I mean, I'm not saying go out and fire McClellan or fire Rob Blake. That's not what I'm saying.
But I'm talking about tough questions.
Yeah, I'm just saying I think there needs to be a little bit more pressure put on the team. And maybe, I mean, like you said, I'm part of the media. Maybe I do need to be asking a little bit more harsher questions or tougher questions, I guess. But
do you think if you ask Todd McClellan, it doesn't seem like this team has an identity. Why do you think that is so far? Like, is that too tough of a question? Is that warranted with the play so far? Like, how do you feel about that as a media member?
I actually think Bernstein asked that question after the last game, but we're just kind of getting the general answers. I mean, I don't know. It's just typical coach speak. And the Kings they seem like one of the more quiet teams in terms of kind of keeping a lot of stuff internally, which is fine. I mean, each team's going to do their own thing, but you just kind of always seem to get general answers from the team. I mean, even going back to last night's game when someone asked McClellan, like, why'd you run the 11-7 outlook? And he's like, that's something we just wanted to do. We wanted to get Clarke in the lineup. Okay, that doesn't answer the question. You just won a game. Why are you changing the lineup the next day? So I don't know. It's just hard. Maybe I'm just saying, I think from a surrounding like LA fanship standpoint, because I'm talking as a fan most of the time, because I mean I'm a fan, and this team needs to have more pressure surrounding it right now. 6-6 record, 12 games in the year. I don't know. It's just you want to see better, and the only reason I say that too is because like there's just no identity. And
it doesn't need to be Dodger-like pressure, right? They had the best record I've ever seen, and they want to fire Roberts. But I mean, you look at Nav W21 comes in here. Expectations are at least second round for the playoffs. Anything less isn't enough. Right now, they're floundering, but they need to pick it up sooner rather than later. Like fans are there with the expectations. Fans are there with the warranting, and whether it's right or not. And we talked about the Pacific might be harder, and we'll get into it around the Pacific and what we think about the rest of the division. So if you have any questions about how we think about other teams, please put them in the chat. I don't want to keep too much on the negative because I think it's frustrating. Frustrations are easier to vent. Like we're venting to each other right now. It'd be, we're all holding, I'm holding not a beer here, but it feels like we're just talking at a bar, I want to get into the positives. And I think a major positive here is Gabe Vilardi. And we talked about it last week, but I think, is it a shot in the moon? Is it 1 week and he came out of the guns blazing and that's it? And he's kept it together for 3 straight weeks so far. I'm just going to propose this question out. Do you think this is a season-long Gabe Vilardi we're going to see? Just like last year with Adrian Kempe, he came out pretty hot, and we saw it all season long. Is this a season-long Gabe Vilardi that we're going to be seeing here?
I think it'd be a little irresponsible to say, yes, he'll keep this pace for the course of the season. But I think this is real in terms of this is a top-line caliber player. I wrote an article last season when Gabe Vilardi got moved down and how good he looked on the wing and how much more comfortable he looked on the wing. And I said, this could be a player that is an impact top 6 winger as a quote-unquote deadline acquisition, you could say. They can go and insert him into the lineup and he could be an impact player for the Kings on the wing in the second half of the season. I understand why they didn't want to do it. You're in the heat of a playoff rush or playoff push to throw something brand new into the mix. I can understand it. I get it. McClellan not wanting to kind of rock the boat. It was all focus on all hands on deck with trying to make playoffs. So I can get it to a point. So, but I believe in Gabe Vilardi. I believed in him last year, and I believe in it again this year. So do I think he'll keep this particular pace up? No, I don't know that that's reasonable, but I think we have a player that's a top 6 producer.
But you don't think he's going to score 60+ goals?
As much as
I mean, I don't know.
Could you imagine how many 13s would be in the arena if he scored 60+ this year?
Shoot, if he
probably
scores
hanging
30.
from the rafters already. With Vilardi, I guess I go back to last season. At the beginning of the year, he wasn't good. I mean, they kept kind of forcing the center position to him when we were all talking about how he should be a winger and on this team, especially after drafting Byfield, after signing Danault. You still have Kopitar around. Obviously, there's going to be some centers that are going to transition to the wing, and Gabe Vilardi, especially with the way he'd kind of been gelling with the team, a move to the wing just seemed really advantageous for him. And being sent down to the McClellan doghouse that a lot of people called, I think was the best thing to happen to him, to make that transition and kind of get acclimated to that position in Ontario. And he looked good in Ontario last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then especially toward the end of the year when he got called up, I think he had 4 points in the last 2 games at the regular season. I think 3 points at the last game in Seattle and another point in Vancouver to end the year.
How many games did he play in the playoffs? Wasn't it 4? Did he play 4 games in the playoffs?
I think he came in at game 3, and then he played the rest, if I'm not mistaken, along with Kupari.
So I mean, that's trust there, right? So
yeah, and this is kind of the first real look we're seeing of Gabe Vilardi on the wing. Is this something that he can sustain at a full season pace? What is his production wise? No, I'm not on board with that with Joe. I mean, I think eventually it'll settle down, but do I want to see it settle down? Of course not. I want to see him continue this pace and be a 40 goal scorer in the NHL. That would be awesome, especially for the story and everything he's gone through. But yeah, I think this is a player. Gabe Vilardi was the 11th overall pick. He was drafted as a top 6 player. And a lot of people had him in the top 5 at the draft. So I know a lot of issues. Maybe he fell in the draft because there was kind of some lingering back issues that started when he was playing for Windsor at the Memorial Cup when he was drafted. So maybe the back, issues kind of came up in the draft, and that's what let him fall. But he's still top 11 pick. Andre Kopitar was an 11th pick. So this is a player that was destined to be a top 6 player, and he's starting to look like it. I'm kind of excited for him.
King's Rule comes in here. Hello, gentlemen. Good to see you guys. Thank you for the week 3 recap. Love to hear your opinions. Thanks. Go Kings, go.
Thanks.
I want to talk. This is kind of rolling into a different situation, which I'm fine. Let's just let, like Bruce Uli says, flow with the water, right? So we talked about the Kings' expectations with the draft picks, the top draft picks, right? The Byfields, the Clarks, the Turcottes, and the Vilardis. And I've said at least that 2 of 4 need to be all-star level players for the rebuild really to take that next level, that Colorado next level of the McCarrs and the McKinnons, right? So everybody's been thinking it's been Byfield and Clarke, or it's going to be Byfield and Clarke. But what if we get the Vilardi and Clarke, right? And Byfield is just a second line center, but you get that right wing one out of Vilardi for a career, and he is a 40 goal scorer. I mean, you're looking at it doesn't really matter where the 2 out of 4 come from to vault this rebuild into that next level. I think obviously center's better than a winger, right? But ultimately, if you get an Artemi Panarin, he's putting up 80+ points a game. That helps New York, right? Patrick Kane helps Chicago. Like where, I'm not saying these guys are this level, so don't at me on Twitter. I'm just saying, Gabe Vilardi, if he's a dominant 40+ goal scorer from the wing, he's gonna help the rebuild at a different level than what we anticipated for sure.
Well, I think you mentioned Panarin. You have. I see what you're saying, but I think it does. We've talked about the issues the Kings could run into if Byfield struggles, and as Kopitar ages, like who is going to be the top centerman. So if there's a complementary player though that could suit Velarde, then it's going to be fine. I still think you got to get that center. That's
Austin Matthews 2024.
Well, hey, listen, they're talking about chaos in Toronto and they're 500. Although now a game up after they won today, so hey, it's way easier in Los Angeles, Austin. So, but. I see what you're saying. Like, it doesn't matter where it comes from, but at the end of the day, if you don't have that guy down the middle, that number one center down the middle, because if you have that, then you have the luxury of playing that high end winger on the second line. Maybe like Panarin doesn't always play with Mika Zibanejad, but they have Mika Zibanejad to just dominate line one because he's one of the best centers in the league, right? So it's like.
No, I know what you're saying. Byfield would have a greater impact because it solidifies the line. I'm just saying that, 2 out of 4 is what we're coming in. Jose Garcia comes in here and says, assuming Gabe gets 60-plus points, what would his contract look like, Russell?
Oof. I don't think he's going to command a lot of money, but, I mean, if he puts up 60-plus, he's not going to be asking for a little bit of money. He's going to
4 by 6.
I don't know. 6 million. That seems pretty high.
He's arbitration eligible RFA after this year, and we've seen this. Like, don't be surprised if something like that comes through. Just only because, like, look at the contracts we've seen come through.
7 by 6. Mm-hmm. Joe likes the deep contracts for the young guys. 7 by 6.
Kempe's had a pretty good start to the season.
But also the thing you have to think about with Velarde. I mean, I don't want to be the guy to say it, but he's got a lingering. I mean, he's got chronic back problems, or he had an issue with his back. I know, and you just have to bring it up. So I mean, it's just something you have to think about. And
listen, no question. Maybe
I'm just thinking from a GM standpoint, right?
Yeah. And in his situation, that kind of 2-year deal, 2 to 3 year deal, maybe makes more sense than the longer term because of that. Like, you got to make sure he gets out of this season unscathed from a health standpoint, but there's something to be said for he's going to be he's 23 years old. You're going to be buying into some UFA years if you sign him to that 5, 6, 7 year deal. Again, we'll see how the season goes, but you saw what Buffalo did with Tage Thompson. You're seeing this around the year or around the league more and more. And yes, it's a gamble early, but with the cap likely going up in the very near future, I don't know that it's that big of a deal if you were to sign him to something like that, just because, listen, if he's going to do it, that's fine, a prove-it deal. But
Nav's coming in 3 for a 2-year, so I don't know if it's $3 million for 2 years.
Yeah,
but I don't think he takes that 60-point scorer. We just saw what Stützle got. We saw what all these other guys got.
Well,
I don't think.
And not for nothing, if he does it and then proves it, well, now you're paying him $8 million, $9 million.
So I have probably $11 million with the cap going up.
The gamble is you're going to overpay early, and you hope, and then it pays off down the road. And I think that's the gamble. But I think the smart teams, the teams that can identify that, and the teams. Well, let's use Buffalo as an example because they did it with 2 guys, with Samuelson, the defenseman, and Tage Thompson. Those deals, if it works, are going to be not just good deals, they're going to be steals. They're going to be absolute steals when it comes time to re-sign Power, when it comes time to re-sign these other guys. Like, they're going to be steals.
I get it. Let me ask you this, though. Boston got away with it, right? With the Bergeron and all those deals. They were all under $7 million. And they were able to compete for a long time. As a GM, do you think there's too many of those style deals where you constantly take chances at these long-term things? Is there too many of those to where what if 3 or 4 of them or 2 or 3 of them don't work out and then you're struggling, right? Like, is it just, hey, let's do 1 or 2? Because Fiala, right, 80-plus points, he could have got more, and it was kind of a low deal, but long-term, you got Kempe with the same thing. Do you keep arbing that? Because what if you get 3 or 4 guys that don't live up to their contracts, and then 3 or 4 years from now you're the Sharks?
Well, listen, you got to trust your.
You like that, Russ?
You got to trust.
I laugh at the Erik Karlsson contract every time I look at it.
Yeah. You got to trust your evaluators and all that stuff because, like, look at Colorado's core. They've got Cal McCarr locked up, Sam and Girard locked up. Josh Manson, locked up. Mikko Rantanen, locked up. McKinnon, Nichushkin. They have so much of their core locked up at great numbers, frankly.
And I'm looking at it this way. It's a different sport. But did you just see what Atlanta did this year? They locked up every single one of their starters for over six years.
The Braves, yeah.
And so, like 5 years from now, when TV money continues to go and rise, and you're paying starters $15 million in baseball, I don't know. I think
the name of the game if you're a GM is to try to identify those guys and get these guys on deals, and that's the name of the game. If you're able to get value out of guys, that's it.
I think it's if you have no doubt in the player that you're signing is going to be a legit superstar, then you try to make that deal. I mean, just go back to last year, Adrian Kempe. Was there doubt that he could have a down year? A little bit, maybe. I mean, it was only his first real year, so that's why he didn't get the 6-7 year deal I was kind of hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring up a player, Tyler Toffoli, and comparing Gabe Velarde. Tyler Toffoli, in his last year of his entry-level contract, I think it's his entry-level contract, he put up 23 goals, 26 assists, 49 points in 76 games. He got hold on, bring it up right here, $3.25 million contract. It's 4% of the cap hit at the time. So if Gabe Velarde puts up 25, 30 goals, I could probably see it coming in around $4 million, maybe 2-3 years around that price. I don't see Velarde asking for anything around $6 million, but like Joe said, he's got arbitration rights. So if he puts up some gaudy numbers, I guess, that he's on pace for right now, it's going to be hard to.
They'll look at comparables, and then
exactly.
And I think both parties are going to want to avoid arbitration, right? Because then you're going to have.
I mean, the thing with Velarde too is, I'll say this. I mean, he said it multiple times. The team has said it multiple times with how much, I guess, time and patience and all these like rehab periods that they've gone through with Velarde. I mean, both sides have shown good faith in trying to help. I mean, Velarde's he's probably thinking to himself, like, I owe this team a debt of gratitude for everything that they helped me with. I mean, obviously it's a business, so you don't look past that. But I mean, also the team has invested a lot of time in Velarde, and it's that time starting to pay off. So I think it's going to be hard to say. I guess we'll just have to wait to see what the production looks like. But I mean, all in all, you just kind of are happy with what Velarde's doing right now, and you hope he keeps it up.
I want to get into one more thing before we get into Pacific, because we've gone quite a bit of time on this topic, and this might be maybe more time than we want to talk on it. Kupari, right? Everybody's wondering, Byfield's out with this chronic illness. Maybe chronic was the wrong word, but he's been out quite a while. Kupari's been playing well since he's come back. What does the lineup shake like when Byfield comes back? Like, how do you guys see Kupari? Where does he fit in this tandem here? Because I believe he's played well. I don't know if you guys think differently, but I think he's played well, and I think he's maybe deserving of a roster spot. But we also saw what happened in Dallas without Lemieux. I mean, we got bullied around a little bit. So where do you think the starting 12 happens for the offense?
I think Kupari, like I said with Velarde, I think in order for him to thrive on this team, or even probably in the NHL, I think he'll be best suited on the wing. He's got way too much speed to be playing down the middle. I think you got to utilize that speed that he has and that sneaky size. I mean, you look at Kupari on the ice compared to a lot of other players. He's a big kid. He's like 6'1", 205, 210 pounds. So kind of don't really recognize that till you see him in person. So I love Kupari's game. And that was one of the players I thought probably, I mean, if it wasn't for waivers, he'd be on this team at the start of the season. And I'm just glad that he's getting the shot. We're kind of seeing this trickle effect right now with the Kings prospects almost. We saw it last year with Adrian Kempe. We're starting to see it now with Gabe Velarde. So this is the reason why maybe we and I say this because of the Kings fans, that Kings fans need to show a little bit more patience in that aspect with the prospects, after I just kind of like went in this whole rant about trying to put a little more pressure. But I mean, with the prospects, maybe we're seeing like a little cascading kind of going down, where you have this one prospect kind of make his way and make his breakthrough into the next season. So hopefully if we saw that with Kempe last year, maybe we're seeing that with Velarde this year. Maybe we'll start to see that with Kupari maybe this year or even the next year. So I guess
But
you have to just
do you not think there was pressure on Kempe last year? Do you not think we said Velarde was one of the most pressure players this year in our preseason preview of he has the most pressure on him to perform? Do you think that like a diamond, pressure makes you shine? Like he had to put up or shut up and show his skill set, like to where Kupari, if you put him in that situation, he could do the same.
I think with Kempe, I think he was a little bit more established as an NHL player. We were talking Velarde because, I mean, he hadn't really established himself at all in the NHL. So we were saying pressure, like, you need to almost put up or shut up or else you're not even going to play in the NHL. That's what we were kind of talking about. And all of a sudden, we're kind of eating our own words. And we were all hoping for him to have this type of breakout season. But I'm just saying
glad to eat that crow.
Yeah, exactly. We'll eat that crow all day. But I mean, I'm just saying that the Kings have the amount of prospects, the amount of high-end talented prospects that you kind of hope this is like a wave of just constant, just rookies or prospects.
Wave of emergence. There we go.
Yeah, entering the lineup, and then all of a sudden you wait, and now you have one coming in, then you have next year you have another one, and after that, then you just have, and hopefully that happens with the prospect pool that the Kings have.
Joe, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like the pressure like kind of put those players into that next level? Do you think it was just a combination of them being ready, or?
I think that's as much of anything. I think you're getting guys that are getting kind of seasoned in the AHL. Like Kupari had a lot of time in the NHL last year, then he got some time in the AHL. Velarde finally had a healthy season and a good run in the AHL. So I think a lot of it is just guys that are kind of growing into them being ready. And I agree with Russ. I think Kupari should be on the wing. I think it'd be a fun line to see him on the wing with Byfield and Fiala.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, a lot of transition there.
The thing, and the reason I would go with that instead of say Kaliev is because Kaliev's getting PP time, so they can still find him ice time on the power play, whereas with Kupari, let him settle into that line with Fiala and Byfield. And as much as I don't love the idea of Kaliev on the fourth line again, it's proven to be something that's been effective. And again, he's getting power play time. He's got 3 power play goals in the last week alone. So he's getting that kind of ice time that he can prove to be an impact player in a different way. So I think that'd be a fun line to see. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Yeah, well, we'll probably talk about how the lineup has been looking. But with Fiala, he played third on the third line the other day. I mean, look, he had 3 assists in 15 minutes of play. That's incredible efficiency. So, I mean, I've said this before that this team has the amount of depth where they don't just have a top 6; they can easily have like a top 9. Mm-hmm. And when the fourth line is producing, you have a player like Arthur Kaliev on there. That's another home run hitter that can score at will on that line. So you don't need to just put players in the top 6 just because you want to call them top 6 players. You want to put them in a spot where they're going to be able to succeed. And that's why I've always thought that Kaliev, especially the way they played last year, Kaliev with Lizotte and Lemieux, they were incredible. They were the second. We talked so much about the nice line. The Lizotte line was right behind him in terms of shot attempts on net and expected goals and all of that. I mean, granted, they're going up against other fourth liners, but hey, they're getting their shifts on the ice and they're playing their role. So that's all you can ask of them. So I mean, the teams in the forward wise, they look great, and it's good to have this problem where you have all these players and you're kind of just trying to find a spot to play them, especially a player like Rasmus Kupari. And we're not even talking about like Alex Iafallo's on the shelf. What's going to happen when he comes back? So I mean, there's a lot of good players producing right now up front. You just kind of hope that they can find their ways on the defensive side.
Let's flip it over here to across the Pacific, which is our next topic. And so we've been playing roughly every team in the Pacific has played. Well, they've all played over 8 games, most of them double digits. Right now, the leaders are Vegas, Edmonton, and Seattle, with right behind them Los Angeles, Calgary, Anaheim, San Jose, and Vancouver. Obviously, there's lots of ammo the whole season. We could talk probably an hour about the division and where everybody stacks up. But where I kind of want to point out and maybe kind of throw this topic to is we talked about how the Pacific is in the middle is probably jumbled up. There's going to be a riser. There's going to be a faller based on preseason assumptions. So far, the faller has been Vancouver and the riser has been Seattle. Mm-hmm. So maybe, I don't know if I stole somebody's topic or you guys had somewhere else to go with this, but I think it's interesting to see the early outcome of the rise and fall that we thought that would happen. Where do you guys think about those two teams, and kind of, do you think this is a season long prediction, or do you think it's just, hey, 10 games in, but it's interesting to see how these teams are playing?
I'm not surprised I don't think I'm surprised at any of the way the division is shaking out. I guess with the exception of, I didn't think Vancouver would be this bad. And I thought Anaheim would be a little bit more competitive. But like, it's also not surprising to see Vancouver struggle. They have an atrocious defense core. Not that surprising. The hope was that Demko would bail them out and they'd score enough goals, and that just hasn't happened. So you guys know, to me, Seattle being a competitive team is not surprising at all. I've talked about Seattle. I really like, if they can get a save, they're going to be tough out, and they're getting barely a save this year, and they're performing a little bit better. But so I would say Dom Lischizin of The Athletic had his kind of updated playoff percentages, and it's kind of funny where it goes. Like, you have the top three teams in the division of Calgary, Vegas, and Edmonton pretty well solidified in playoffs. The Kings come in at fourth with that 63%, and nobody else is anywhere near playoffs. And Russ, I know you and I talked before the season, like, that we both had the top three teams, I think, kind of the same. We both had LA as that fourth team, be making it as a wild card. I think that's exactly where they slot in here. The way the season has started, nothing has altered me. Like, I know Seattle's ahead of them right now. I don't think Seattle, as much as I am a fan of them being competitive, I don't think they're going to stay here. But I think LA is I think they settle into being the fourth best team in this division. I think that's right where they will be.
I think, I'm right along with you. I didn't expect Anaheim to be good whatsoever, and honestly,
well, Zegras has been off the ice too, so that's your number one center. But they're still atrocious.
Zegras has been playing.
I thought he was injured for like 3 or 4 games, right?
No, I think he maybe at the start of the year. I don't know, but I think he's been playing the majority of their games. But either way, I pretty much expected them to be this bad. They kind of signed Klingberg, just gave him a 1-year deal, hoping that they can find some deal for him at the deadline. Same thing with Kulikov. They just took him for whatever. I think a lot of people kind of overlooked a lot of the players that they lost the last year. I mean, you lose Hampus Lindholm, you lose Ricard Raquel, you lose Josh Manson. You're going to be a bad team. So Anaheim's not surprising me. Vancouver, I'm a little surprised by how bad they are. But then you look at the defensive lineup and I'm like, okay, this shouldn't surprise me at all. They're terrible in the blue line. So that'll be a team to watch in the next, probably this season, to see what happens in terms of what happens to Bo Horvat, what happens to Elias Pettersson, what happens to Bruce Boudreau. I mean, are they going to end up firing their coach? I think, what was it, Rutherford, that came out and had that Hockey Night in Canada interview right after they lost? That was epic. And he's talking about, the rebuild. I don't know. We might have to look at it. And it's like, oh man, this is going great. I love it. But I don't know. The Sharks are the Sharks. We all kind of expect them to be where they're at.
Well, I mean, Erik Karlsson's kind of premier Erik Karlsson right now. I think he's got 8 or 9 goals right now.
Yeah, but
the problem is he's the only one. I mean, they're no good.
What's your guys' opinion on Seattle and not Seattle, but Shane Wright? Played 5 games. He's getting like 6 minutes a game. He's obviously shouldn't be in the OHL, but they're not giving him any opportunity to play. What do you guys think about that? I mean, obviously the Clarke watch has been real. I mean, the hype train is in full force. We're going to derail if he gets sent back to the OHL. But I mean, Kraken fans got to feel similar. Like, hey, you're not even giving this guy, he's playing 5-6 minutes a night. Like, you're not giving him any opportunity to show if he can be here or not.
It's kind of weird it's kind of weird what they're doing with him. I think he's played 4 or 5 games so far. I don't think he's eclipsed more than 6 or 7 minutes in a game yet this season. So do I think they're going to send him back? Probably. It's kind of looking that way, but I don't know. Maybe they're kind of stringing this out a little bit until they get to the World Junior camps that are coming up probably in the next end of the month here or so, or close to December. And then you kind of make your decision after that. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I haven't really been following the Shane Wright, but I guess with just Seattle as a whole, I'm with you, Joe. I think are they going to be good relying on Martin Jones throughout the whole season? That would be kind of tough. So,
No.
I mean, I'm saying that from perspective with Jonathan Quick and Cal Peterson in net, but yeah, I don't know. It's going to be hard to see. And the top three teams, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vegas,
they are a tier above.
Yeah, they're the premier tier of the Pacific Division. Edmonton's Connor McDavid's going to put up like 150 points this year. He's incredible with the way he's playing. And then Calgary looks pretty good. And Vegas, man, a lot of people were hating on us for that Jack Eichel trade, but he looks like a top 5 center in the NHL right now. So so I mean, he's looking pretty good, and Vegas is looking like a scary team. So Kings have their work cut out for them in the Pacific. It's going to be some tough games coming up here.
So real quick on Seattle. First of all, they're top 10 in Corsi for percentage of 5-on-5. Again, it's a good team if they can get a save. And I'm pretty sure the general manager of the Kraken, Ron Francis, said he not only expects Shane Wright to be up here, but he expects Shane Wright to play. So I kind of found that a little bit interesting, that there seems to be a little butting of heads in the media maybe with Francis and his coach, because as you alluded to, Wright is not playing.
Yeah.
But he's here. I think the GM wants him here, but the coach isn't playing him. So I don't know.
He's at 5 games. He's playing less than 50% of the games. Like, he's constantly healthy scratch there. So I think it's quite interesting. Vegas is on a steamroll. We had Sinbin on. Go back and watch that episode for the Vegas preview. But he's just, that team is either going to be first, second, just dominant, or they're going to be a dumpster fire if injuries.
The only way they're a dumpster fire though is injury. That is it. Because they're healthy.
Because they're thin. They're thinner than a piece of paper. So
and that's the thing with the Kings is they can afford injuries, and you have the depth to replace. Yeah, exactly. We look at what we're seeing with IFL. You have Rasmus Kupari in the lineup. We're talking about, we're trying to keep a spot for him in the lineup. He's playing so well. So, I mean, if Vegas can stay healthy, they're going to be a top team, or even probably win the Pacific Division, depending on what happens with Edmonton. So yeah, it's going to be a tough division to watch. And man, one thing I'll say too is Matty Beniers looks pretty good in Seattle. Man, yes, he's an incredible player.
Very good.
All right, it's time for our sponsor here at DraftKings. Hockey fans, it's finally time to hit the ice again, and thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL, you're in for a season of a lifetime. New customers can bet $5 on any team and get $200 in free bets if they win. Do you want to bet tomorrow night when the Kings play Chicago? Will Velarde score as well as Patrick Kane? If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets, like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at an even bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game and get $200 in free bets if they do. That's code THPN, DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions may apply. See show notes for details. English is hard sometimes, folks. All right. Coming into the big decision that's on everybody's minds. As the conductor of the hype train, it's on my mind as well. But Clarke decision time. Played his 9th game last night in the 11-on-7. Your boy, first to throw that out there on Twitter, that I thought it might be 11-on-7. So give your boy his due. The one game insider, Russell, I took it over for you a little bit. You can have it back. Too hard of a job, not enough drinking, too much tweeting. You can have it back. So, but everything's on its mind. Now the decision has to be made, right? Took 2 games off. Everybody's wondering why, asking for Rob Blake to be fired, with this, and T-Mac to be fired for this decision, not putting him on the ice. I thought he played well. And then key parts in the game where it was 4-on-4 or big power play, he was on the ice. So it still shows to me that T-Mac really values what he brings to the game. Now it's time to put up or shut up. Are we going to burn this contract and let him be on the team for the rest of the season? Joe.
Yeah, I mean, and I think McClellan in some of his post games, he's sort of been asked only on occasion directly about Clarke, and he made the one comment where he said he wasn't the 6th, the 5th, the 4th best defenseman. I think the other one of the other days he said something to the effect of, we'll monitor him. He's going to have game 9 coming up, and then 10, 11, 12 coming up, and so I. Just reading between the lines that I would suspect that McClellan wants him here and thinks he's going to be here. So I think it's a no-brainer personally. I think he's comfortably among the top 6 defensemen on the roster. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too. And the only reason I say that, actually, first of all, I guess I'll start with this. Is the other side of the argument with people ask like, well, why would he have to go to juniors? He's not going to have to do anything else there. That's just going to be a lower level of hockey. But then you also have to think about that extra level of control or that extra year of control that you have for a player like Brandt Clarke. Because I have people asking me all the time, well, what's going to happen when you have to pay all these players? Well, first of all, then that means if you're paying all these players, that means they're producing, so you have to pay them. And then second of all, I don't think that's going to be too big of a deal because we're still ways away from that. So that's the other side of the argument. But for me, I look at it with Brandt Clarke. You just kind of look at the lineup for the Kings. And like Joe just said, he's probably one of the top 6, maybe even top 5 defensemen on the team right now. And he's only a 19-year-old. So if you end up sending him back, then you're kind of looking at which I think this is kind of what Rob Blake and them are kind of debating in their war room is, well, if we send Clarke back, then are we good with having a player like Sean Walker play the majority of the season on the right side alongside Alex Edler? So I don't know. I think
the answer to that is no.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of along that train where I'd rather have Clarke be in the lineup over Sean Walker. And that's why I was kind of dumbfounded a little bit that they went 11-7 in last night's game. Just why are you going 7 defensemen? Just make your mind. Is it bizarre? Make up your mind. Put Walker in the lineup or put Clarke in the lineup. Don't try to like beat around the bush and have both players play. Maybe there's something else behind that, but from the outside and the answers we got from McClellan after the game,
what would be funny, Russ, about that is if McClellan isn't getting a straight answer from.
Yeah, right.
Like Blake, he's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm playing him anyways. I'm playing 7. Exactly. How about that? Now that
you want to wait till next week? I'm playing him today. How about that?
I'd get a kick out of that.
But yeah, it's just if you send him back, then you're stuck with Sean Walker or even Jordan Spence. And as much as I like Jordan Spence, I don't think he's NHL ready in terms of playing a full or even half of season with the team. I think he needs to be playing in Ontario and kind of develop his game a little bit more there. I think that'd be great for his development, and he'll eventually make the jump into the NHL full time. So with Clarke, I think one decision we'll have to talk about, which once the team announces that he's going to end up staying, which I think is going to end up happening, is what's going to happen when World Juniors is coming up? Do they send him down there at that point? Do you send him to Canada?
No.
Or do you keep him with the team?
I think
no offense to our brethren up north, but F Canada.
They had 2 chances to get him, and
if he's on our team, if he's on our team, he's on our team, right? I mean, go cry over Europe.
And I'll just keep this debate going. I'll keep this debate going. I mean, we talked a lot about Brandon, you've said it multiple times. It's like, why would he need to go to OHL? He doesn't have anything more to prove there. He doesn't even be playing that level of competition. I mean, the World Juniors, you have a player like Brandt Clarke kind of showcasing himself at the World Juniors, playing on that kind of level of hockey. I think that could be pretty well for his development. But I think that's something we'll have to watch for when it comes.
So here's the thing, though, that I'll counter that. The World Juniors is a no-win situation for Brandt Clarke, because if he goes and dominates, it's like, okay, well, he's been playing in the NHL a bit. He lit up the Ontario Hockey League for years. Obviously, he's going to go do this. If he doesn't, all it does is raise more questions. I actually don't love the idea of him going to the World Juniors because I think it's a no-win situation for him. It's either he's supposed to or he doesn't, and then all the questions come in like, he didn't look great.
Also, the Rasmus Kupari situation too, where he tore his ACL the first game. So God. I mean, yeah, I see that, but that's something that's probably going to end up coming up because he's definitely going to get invited. I mean, there's definitely going to be a call made to Rob Blake to see what his availability is.
Yeah, and Rob Blake's answer should be, I appreciate it. No, because we are going to be, it's going to be the end of December. He says, you know what, we have a game against, we got Vegas and then Colorado back to back on the 27th and the 29th of December. Sorry, we can't send Brandt Clarke because we're going to be playing some pretty important games at the end of December and into early January. If he's here, that's what here for. You're not here to just kind of and go back to the question that you get, Russ, about, wow, when it comes time to pay these guys in the extra year, it's like, what is your expectation? Do you want to try to make playoffs, or are you still building? Right? If you want to make playoffs, then he stays. He gives a better chance.
It's just weird, this admiration almost that Blake and them have for Sean Walker. I mean, I understand all the everything that the player went through last year and everything he did to fight through to come back. And I think McClellan even mentioned it about how they gave him the A and at a preseason game, and he had said, "Oh, it's because of what he did in the off ice and blah blah blah, part of the team and all that." So, but I don't know. On the ice, is Sean Walker better than Brian Clarke? I'd say no. Is he better than even playing Sean Durzi on the right side and bringing up a Tobias Bjornfoot or Jacob Overari to play their actual left side? So it's just strange this admiration they have with Walker, because I think he's a good player, but I think there's better options on the team, is all I'll say.
Yeah. So let's get going over here to the next topic, because I think this one will wrap us up quite a bit. We only got about 30 minutes left in the shindig. Shuffling the lines, biggest move. Right after we said that they shouldn't do anything with Fiala, hey, let's prove each other wrong. And I had to eat crow with Pavel on Twitter because it was right away that it happened. But Fiala drops down to the third line. Now, I probably should have thought of this beforehand, that one outside of the first line, usually whoever's playing the best gets the most minute, right? I mean, usually it's Kempe's line or Kopitar's line, and that gets the most minutes. Outside of that, obviously Danault gets a lot of minutes in the key situations, but at least in the bottom six, usually the third line or the fourth line still gets 15 plus minutes a night, and he's playing on the power play and all that kind of stuff. So maybe I'm just kind of like hiding the fact that I was wrong, but yeah, Fiala's down on the third line. Let's start with there. How has he looked so far on that line? Does it really matter to you guys now that you've seen the outcome of it? Where are we going with that, Russ?
Well, I think he's looked great on the third line, and yeah, it's funny. Right after we just talked about how you need to keep that first line together and try to force some chemistry alongside with Kopitar, but Fiala is a player that he just kind of goes to the beat of his own drum, and we've seen with Kopitar, he likes to play with certain type of players. I mean, look at what he said about Alex Iafallo and Adrian Kempe and all these players he's played with. But with Fiala, he just kind of does his own thing out there. And maybe that's something that Anže maybe finds hard to play alongside with. So, and with Fiala, I think the benefit of playing on that third line is he's playing with players that are a little bit more, I guess, inexperienced. So he has this almost alpha dog mentality where I can just do my own thing on the ice and I don't really have to worry, and everyone just kind of keep up with me, which I'm totally fine with. You sign a player to that high of a contract. I mean, if he wants to do his own thing and play the level of hockey he's playing right now, cool. Here's your line. Do whatever you want with it. We'll give you some complimentary pieces and kind of thrive a little bit. And that's what we're seeing with him playing alongside Rasmus Kupari and Carl Grundstrom. So it'll just be interesting to see what happens with Quentin Byfield when he comes back.
Yeah, I remember I said that I would have definitely given the top line a little bit more time. And I also don't have an issue if the coach determines, it's time to shake things up. I just thought it was a little odd that he did it after what was probably the best game the trio played together. They owned a 14-6 share in shot attempts, 70%. They completely dominated the scoring chances in that game at 9-3. They had 7 high danger chances. Like, if you go back and watch, because I had the luxury of watching that game not live, so I kind of had the motion ripped out of it already because I wasn't watching it live. I knew the outcome, but I was watching the game and I'm like, the Fiala Kopitar Kempe line is absolutely buzzing. They just didn't finish. Kopitar had a couple of grade A's. They all had grade A chances. They just didn't finish. It's like you could argue they were coming off the best game that they played together, and then they were split up. And obviously, listen, it's looked good since. And again, I don't have a problem if you're losing games and the coach is like, I want to shake things up a little bit. That's fine. And I think there's some, Fiala was a little careless, I think, with the puck in the neutral zone a couple times in the third period that, maybe the coach is like, I've had enough. I think he's making too many mistakes with the puck. carelessness, whatever, puck management we've talked about a lot. So again, I get that just from the numbers standpoint, looking at how much they dominated that game. Like if anybody finishes one of those grade A's or two of those grade A's that they had, we're not even having this conversation. Like they were that good that game. It just, they didn't go in and they lost the game. And so coach is going to shake things up, and obviously has the right to do that.
Nav comes in here. When healthy, a third line of 19, 55, and 22 would be scary. Do you think that would be the eventual line there if the Velarde line continues gelling, or how do you feel about that?
I just think trying to project that far ahead as we've seen. Well, these lines are jumbling around right now. Mm-hmm. Who knows when Iafallo gets back, if somebody else isn't hurt or up and down the lineup. Like that's fine, but I'm not going to predict that that's going to be the line because I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see Iafallo in the lineup till like January or February. I mean, the way I saw him, he had a crutch walking around Crypto.com arena the last time I saw him. So it's going to be pretty long term with Iafallo. So I guess with that third line, it's just about what's going to happen with Byfield because he's only kind of dealing with an illness. So I would expect him to be back in the lineup soon. And with Kupari taking that spot, do you just kind of move Kupari over and maybe slide Grundstrom down to the fourth line? I don't know. It'll be something to watch, though. I think that's something. That's a line I would love to see. I would love to see Byfield play with Fiala and Kupari because the thing. I mean, you look at what Fiala did last year playing with Boldy. I mean, Matt Boldy's a young player. I think that was that his rookie year? I think it was his rookie season last year, and he was incredible playing with Fiala. That was when Kevin started really to thrive last season. So maybe he can do the same with a player like Byfield, and he can kind of elevate Byfield's game a little bit.
Justin coming in, AI is trade bait, bro. I think after being an injury, like what is his value at this point after the injury? Is it?
No, it's still really good. Look how at the beginning of the season, Alex Iafallo was probably one of the best forwards on the ice for the Kings in terms of 200.
So you think the injury has you think the injury has no jurisdiction on his value?
Not at all. That was just kind of a freak play. He went to the corners, got hurt his lower leg or something like that, and it's not like I don't know. It has nothing to do with it. Yeah. Iafallo is a great player, and he's a legit player playing on the bottom six right now. And he was thriving there playing with Velarde and Byfield to start the year. So as soon as he's back, I would love to see him kind of play out his contract with the Kings and see what happens after that.
As they say, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. And with Fiala going down, Velarde comes up. That first line, has looked pretty good. And Velarde is getting his pub, getting his due with how he's been playing so far. Any nuances that you guys have seen with that line that you want to bring to light? How do you guys feel like it's been so far on the small sample size?
With the Kopitar line?
Kopitar line, yeah.
Go ahead,
Russ. I think Velarde has looked incredible. I mean, I was a little worried that maybe that extra kind of jolt of pressure being placed alongside Kopitar and Kempe would maybe get to him a little bit. But, hey, the first game he played exactly like how he played at the start of throughout the start of the season. So it's been good. I said I think it was after the Jets game or what game it was, and that he only had like 14 minutes of ice time. And I was like, man, he's easily the Kings' best player right now. He has to get more minutes. And sure enough, in last night's game, he plays over 20 minutes a night. His first time in his career playing over 20 minutes a night. So I think it's great to see him playing on that top line because, I mean, he hasn't looked out of the place. He hasn't looked out of place at all. So if he can keep him there and he's producing, then, hey, all power to McClellan.
The way he thinks, I think it's actually a pretty seamless fit with Anze Kopitar because Kopitar is a guy that, he'll slow things down. He's much more of a cerebral player, the way he can see plays 2-3 steps ahead. And I think Velarde's not unlike that, where he gets in the offensive zone. He's much more of like, let's slow this down a little bit and kind of look to make a play or find a seam somewhere. And so I think that they complement each other pretty good, especially with a guy like Kempe, who then can go and do his north-south thing. I think it is a good fit.
I think let's get into the Bet Stamp Player of the Week. So we're Bet Stamp Player of the Week. Bet Stamp is a betting app where you can predict where any odds are going to happen. You have multiple opportunities. So if you're going to bet the Kings game tomorrow night, you look on it, find the best odds. make your money go further. It's also free to use. You're able to track your stats. Are you better at betting over-unders? You better at betting differentials, goals, parlays, all these kind of things? It keeps your stats. Do you want to follow another bettor like Joe, who's continually betting on the Devils and he doesn't know why? Follow him and see how his stats are going on and see if he's making the right decisions. BetStamp, use our code HockeyRoyalties. See where you're going there. You know what else happens? Hey, I'm not with the MGM Grand. Boom. BetStamp gives you free money to join through their program. It's really something awesome. Joe, you've been betting on it for quite a bit. How has BetStamp changed the way you view betting?
It's being able to find the best odds. It's the name of the game. And like I look at last night, for example, I had 5 bets last night, and I got what you would call closing line value. The bets that I made beat the closing line. And if you're doing that over the course of a season or a lifetime or however, the more you do that, you're going to come out ahead of it. And having access to multiple sports books and the way that stamp just shows them right there, it's huge. I think so. As an example, the Vegas Golden Knights closed -165. I had a -120. So that's a huge deal over the long haul, over the course. And BetStamp makes that just so easy to do.
That's great. That's great. Let's get into it, Joe. You close that out. You start us off here in your player of the week.
I'm going to go maybe somebody a little not as obvious, because I think there is one fairly obvious. I'm going to guess one of you two are going to go with. So I'll let you take what I think is going to be an obvious one. I'm going to go with Arthur Kaliev. And the reason I'm going to go with Arthur Kaliev is he's been bumped. He's been on the third line a bit, but mostly he's kind of settling in back to that fourth line. But you know what he's asked to do? Score goals. More specifically, score goals on the power play. I know he's got 3 power play goals in the last week. So I think he's doing his job. I know Russ pegged him to be a 30-goal scorer this year, and I had a concern of, I don't know if T-Mac's going to get him off that fourth line, so I don't know if it's going to happen. But he's getting power play looks on the second unit, and he's scoring goals from that right circle. So I'm going to say Arthur Kaliev doing his job, being a productive or an effective bottom 6 forward, but contributing on the power play with 3 power play goals this week.
Love it.
That's exactly why I had that bold prediction of 30 power play goals, because I thought he would get a lot more power play time, and sure enough, that's starting to pay off. I think he's on pace for about 27 or so. So I would love to see that happen. But I guess my player of the week, I'll go with the obvious one. I think it's Kevin Fiala.
Yeah.
7 points in the 3 games I think that we're covering. 8 points in 4. He's been pretty much the player that we and Kings fans have kind of hoped he would be when he came over these last few games. And I think I'll just highlight the Blues game as a matter of fact. That was probably one of the best games I've seen a winger play on the Kings in quite some time. He was literally all over the ice. And the video I shared and some of the clips that even you just hear Alex Faust talking about, it's like, man, Fiala's all over the ice tonight. And sure enough, yeah, he was just play after play, drawing penalties, making crazy passes. It was beautiful. That first pass he made to Gabe Velarde was incredible. I mean, you're talking gold tape to tape on NHL 23. That's how crazy of a pass it was. I thought it got me out of my seat. I loved it. And Kevin Fiala is the player of the week for me.
I like it. I'm going to go way off the beaten path, not for numbers or anything, but maybe expectations and filling shoes. And that's Rasmus Kupari. I think he came in, got drawn up, maybe surpassed Jared Anderson-Dolan, which, that could be a discussion for another pod. But I thought really stepped in quite nicely, was playing wing down in Ontario, comes up here, plays center, which, asked to do on a last minute basis. And I think really did, a well job. And maybe that was, product of him playing with 22, or if it was a product of him actually looking good on the ice. I think we talked about it a little bit in our group chat. Sometimes last year, I thought he was a little bit scatterbrained defensively, just kind of floating around there, which young players can tend to do when they're not sure where they're supposed to be. And I thought he's skating with more of a purpose on a continual basis. And I really have liked what I've seen out of him in that small sample size.
Yeah, I'll say with Kupari too, is he jumped into that first game with no practice time with the Kings this season. So it was kind of weird because the team had been, I think we mentioned in the last pod, they only had 13 forwards on the roster. And especially with that kind of unknown illness that's going around that's affected Arvidsson and now maybe Byfield, it was strange that they hadn't called up another forward. So, I mean, it was nice to see Kupari jump into the lineup and just do his thing. And you hope he stays, or I hope he stays at least.
Yeah, he's been doing a good job. Well, boys, we've had a good time. Thank you, everybody in the chat. As always, you can find all of our articles coming out at hockeyroyalty.com. So read, scroll wherever you're at. All the Twitter handles are scrolling across the bottom. But if you're not watching on YouTube, you're looking at JW Patarina for Joe, at NHL Russell for Russ, and at Random Commando 24 for me, and for the podcast itself at hockey_royalty. We got games coming up tomorrow, so keep an eye out that for Chicago going forward, or if you're listening to the car tonight. Thank you for all the fans in the chat. We always appreciate you guys. Please like, subscribe, tell your friend, tell your family, tell your neighbor, tell your coworker that Hockey Royalty is your number one source for Los Angeles Kings news. Boys, had a great time with you guys. Hopefully the Kings find the identity that we have on this pod, because we killing it.
Always a pleasure.
All right. And as always, on this podcast, go Kings go.
Thanks for listening.